Formula 1 lets give each of its races a unique slogan or storyline to make them feel unique. Baku is the Street Fighter's race, Singapore is the night race, Monza is the Temple of Speed, and Imola is the other one in Italy. But oftentimes, the most evocative storyline is when a race is a driver's home race. Charles Leclerc in Monaco, Oscar Piastri in Albert Park, Oscar Piastri in China? Oscar Piastri in Monaco? Wait, hang on a second. It adds an extra layer of spice when drivers are vying for that hometown glory, and it gives the fans in the stands someone to root for. And this got me thinking, considering a driver often gains a home Grand Prix when they get popular enough, like Max Verstappen, who was actually a key reason the Dutch Grand Prix came back. What would it look like if every driver gained a home Grand Prix? And actually, what if the entire calendar was just these home races? We're going to look through the 2025 F1 calendar as if a new rule was passed dictating that every driver needs a home Grand Prix, and that every Grand Prix is the home of exactly one driver. 20 drivers on the grid, 20 races on the calendar. Seems reasonable to me. My name is Mr. V. Let's get into it. A couple ground rules that went into making this list. Firstly, every Grand Prix has to be the home race of one and only one driver, no sharing. That means 2 Aussies on the grid, 2 races in Australia. A home Grand Prix just has to be from the same country as the driver's racing license. It doesn't have to be in the same town or stupidly close to where they grew up. But if we have multiple good options, we will be taking hometown into consideration. I've made an effort to be realistic with these picks, which means we're going with FIA Grade 1 where possible, and Grade 2 or 3 where not. I'm sure it would be hilarious to have the Alonso Grand Prix at the karting track at the Alonso Museum, but it's not exactly fit for Formula 1, is it? And finally, I've set the calendar up in a vaguely reasonable path across the globe, but I have taken into consideration time of year, which means the Stroll Grand Prix is still going to be at a weird time because you can't race in Canada in December, as much as I would like to see Formula 1 try. And so, we start the home race calendar in the same place as the real 2025 calendar, Australia, home of Oscar Piastri. Now, Piastri is from Melbourne, and so it only makes sense to have the opening race in Albert Park. I know, crazy theory going on in this video. As we know, good track for Formula 1, great crowd atmosphere, good opener to the season, no more explanation needed. Next. Our second race of the season keeps us in Australia because, assuming he isn't fired before March, Jack Doohan is on the grid. Australia doesn't have any other Grade 1 circuits, which means we can start to get a bit creative with this one. As far as I'm aware, Jack Doohan is from Gold Coast, and there are some options nearby, including a track with one of the most unique names I've ever seen, Surfer's Paradise. And while this would be interesting for Formula 1, I don't think it's quite right. We could head to a track which would be very familiar for MotoGP fans, Phillip Island, and this would have a strong home race connection for Jack, as Turn 1 is actually called Doohan Corner, named after his dad. But motorbike circuits are laid out pretty differently to car circuits, with an emphasis on long, high and medium speed corners, and I just get the feeling that racing here in Formula 1 would be god awful. Also, a little bit of a scumbag move to have 2 races in the Melbourne area, completely excluding the rest of Australia. And so we are not going to be racing at Phillip Island, but instead another track which has hosted Formula 1 before, the Adelaide Street Circuit. This place is a fun circuit, has a ton of Formula 1 history, and because it still has regular events, has pretty decent facilities for hosting an F1 sized event. Seems like a no-brainer to me. The layout might not be everyone's cup of tea with quite a lot of 90-degree corners at the start of the lap, but it's produced great Formula 1 races in the past and I'm sure it can do it again. Pretty solid pick for Mr. Doohan here. That is assuming he stays on the grid, and not looking great for Jack, is it? We then head from Australia to a country which lots of people think is Australia, New Zealand, for the home race of Liam Lawson. Now, New Zealand has 0 Grade 1 circuits. It also has 0 Grade 2 circuits, but then at Grade 3 it has 7, which gives us some pretty crazy options. Lawson is from the North Island and grew up near Auckland, so the closest Grade 3 circuit to that is Hampton Downs, which looks kind of like a crazy Zandvoort, but is absolutely tiny at 2.6 kilometers, almost a kilometer shorter than Monaco. We then have a load of other tiny circuits, such as, and this is the part of the video where my pronunciation deeply offends the part of my family that's from New Zealand, Taupo, Ruapuna, aka the Euromark Motorsports Park, and Tere Tonga. I really hope you can see why we shouldn't use this one. For me, the one that makes the most sense for Formula 1 is Highlands Park, as it's the longest Grade 3 circuit in New Zealand, and the layout is absolutely mental. They're gonna crash here, they're gonna crash here, they're gonna crash here! I love it! This place has a grand total of 0 grandstands, and the pit lane is just some open road, so that is gonna need a little bit of work, but I do love the layout. I would say this is like Zandvoort on crack, but really it's more like Zandvoort on a prime mixture of LSD, cocaine that's actually just dishwasher salt, and 3 Monster Energies per day. Beautiful. From New Zealand, we head north to Japan and the home race of Yuki Tsunoda. This one is a no-brainer. While Fuji Speedway is Grade 1 and is closer to where Yuki Tsunoda grew up, it's gotta be Suzuka. This is one of the best circuits for Formula 1, and it will be a cold day in hell when I allow anywhere else to host the Japanese Grand Prix. You should know all about this one. Banger home race for Tsunoda. Let's move on. We then head to a bit of a wild card as Alex Albon does race under a Thai license, and so it's Southeast Asia next. Thailand is a huge country, so let's see which part Alex is from to help make our decision. Okay, that's not helpful at all. Thailand does actually have one and only one FIA Grade 1 circuit, the Buriram or Chang International Circuit. This place has hosted MotoGP for a few years now, and so it's not a completely unknown entity. And I think we can safely say that Formula 1 here would be fine. It would be sort of okay. The huge long straight is reminiscent of Shanghai, but then the rest of the circuit is no way near as interesting as Shanghai. More like Mugello if I'm being generous, or Sochi if I'm not. It's always hard to say how good racing at a track will be without seeing it, but I can safely say that a single lap here in Formula 1 would be nothing special at all. Pretty mid-home race for Alex then, but at least he takes us to an interesting location, instead of just giving us another British Grand Prix, because as you will see later, we do already have quite a few of those. With that, we are done with Asia, and while I am sort of heading east to west, we are now heading off to Canada for the Stroll Grand Prix, so it sits about the same time of year as the actual Canadian Grand Prix. Canada only has one Grade 1 circuit, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, and Stroll is from Montreal, so this fits perfectly. I really like this circuit in Formula 1. This is one of the races I would love to go to someday. I just get the feeling there would be a great vibe in the crowd. Would they be rooting for Lance at his home Grand Prix? Next question. After Canada, we cross over the Atlantic to head to the European leg of the season, which, unsurprisingly, is most of the season in this hypothetical. Let's start with the Andrea Kimi Antonelli Grand Prix in Italy. Obviously, Italy already has 2 circuits on the actual F1 calendar, and Mugello brings us up to 3 Grade 1 options. I guess that means we have to look at where Antonelli is from to help us make our decision. You know what? No, I'm making an executive decision. We're going to Monza. It would be wrong to go to Italy and not go to Monza. And while this is Antonelli's home race, it's also Ferrari's. Ferrari is obviously the home team at any race in Italy, with absolutely biblical showings by the Tifosi in the grandstands at Imola and Mugello. But Monza is the big one. Monza is the main event. This circuit has hosted more F1 races than any other circuit, and neither I, nor presumably Mr. Andrea Kimi, wish to change that. From Monza, we head west to the home Grand Prix of Charles Leclerc. It's the Monaco Grand Prix. You should know this one, it's the Monaco Grand Prix. And so we head west once more to a hill above Le Castellet, and the venue of the home Grand Prix for Pierre Gasly, Paul Ricard. Now, Pierre is actually from northern France, and I believe the most northern of all the 3 French drivers, but basically, someone had to get the blue striped hell, and it's Pierre. Sorry. The racing here in the last few years has been not great. But then again, there's some tracks on the actual calendar which are worse than not great, and so I'll take Paul Ricard over those any day. There's one other Grade 1 circuit in France, and it shall be the home race for rookie Isaac Hadjar, Magny-Cours. This place used to be a Formula 1 venue up until 2008, and I believe the layout would be pretty good with modern F1 cars. You've got some clear overtaking opportunities, you've got whatever this corner profile is called a kidney bean. I don't know, but I like it. Magny-Cours is right in the middle of France, and therefore Hadjar gets this one by being from Paris and therefore the closest. It's a solid home Grand Prix, and I'm confident not the worst race that's going to take place in France this year. One final race in France for Esteban Ocon, and so we're going to head to a little town which racing fans have probably never heard of, Le Mans. While I would be curious to see Formula 1 cars take on the full Circuit de la Sarthe, we are going to take the much more reasonable Bugatti circuit for this race, which has hosted Formula 1 once before. In 1967, by Formula 1 standards, it's a very simple circuit, but it's got just enough tight windy sections to maybe make some interesting racing happen. And then this venue is obviously more than capable of hosting enormous crowds for a weekend, and also, if Mark Webber has to come here as a pundit, we might give him PTSD. So that's fun. After France, we head up north to the Netherlands and the home Grand Prix of Max Verstappen. On the real calendar, Max already has a home Grand Prix at Zandvoort, and while we could consider TT Assen, it's not grade 1, and also I've tried it in the sim down at VR and Brighton, great sim race place by the way, and it sucks for Formula 1, like massively sucks. Zandvoort it is then, and the beach party can continue for the Orange Army. Our final driver from mainland Europe is the one and only Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg is of course German, which gives us two options for grade 1 circuits, the Hockenheimring and the Nürburgring. Equally good options in my eyes, and they're very close together, both in the West German supercorridor, which is not surprising as it's the home of the German auto industry. I guess the only way to pick between them is to see which one is closer to Nico's hometown. He's from Emmerich am Rhein, which means the Nürburgring takes it. I'm perfectly happy with this. The Grand Prix circuit is a great venue for Formula 1 as it proved in its last outing at the 2020 Eiffel Grand Prix. And every time we go to the Nürburgring, we normally get some fun social media of drivers scaring celebrities on a lap of the Nordschleife. I'm all for it. We've got one more European country to visit before we can head to the Americas, the UK, and much to the delight of British Formula 1 fans, and I assume the disgust of everybody else, we have 4 races on Rain Island due to our 4 British drivers on the grid this year. Now, fun fact alert, when I was looking up Nico's hometown of Emmerich, I found out it's actually twinned with a UK town, Kings Lynn. And an even funner fact, that's where George Russell's from. Kind of makes them hometown cousins or something. I guess we need some name for the George Nico link up, maybe Husselberg? Gulk? Anyway, let's take George Russell first. Obviously, one of our British drivers is going to get Silverstone, but sorry George, Lewis is going to pull rank on this one. The UK does have a lot of tracks, but actually none of the other ones apart from Silverstone are grade 1, which means we can pick something reasonable which could be upgraded. And what better pick for a Norfolk boy like George than a Norfolk track? I'm thinking Snetterton. Snet has never hosted Formula 1, but it is well known in the UK racing scene and it has a whole load of history, with corner names like Williams, Palmer, Hamilton, George Russell in shambles, Brundle, and of course, Bombhole. It doesn't have the facilities of Silverstone, but it does have grandstands. It's not quite the capacity for Formula 1, but it's a start. A lot of upgrades therefore needed to host Formula 1, but I do think the layout could make a fun race to start the British leg of the season. Then we head to the big boy, Lewis Hamilton's home Grand Prix at Silverstone. Now, if you watch Formula 1, I would hope you know about the circuit already, so we're not going to dwell on this one, but instead head on to our next Brit, Lando Norris. Norris is from Bristol in the west, and it does have a circuit not too far away in Castle Combe, but ooh. While the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix was a fun race on a circuit something similar to this, I'm not so sure. It's also pretty small, just 3 kilometers around, which means we would get some crazy short lap times in Formula 1, somewhere around the 40-second mark. Let's look somewhere else. Let's give Norris one of the FIA Grade 2 circuits from the UK, and one that's hosted Formula 1 before, Donington Park. Donny is a simple and very fun circuit which could be a little basic for modern Formula 1, but we won't know that until we try it. It's also slap bang in the middle of the UK, which means it's very easy to get to from many different towns or airports. That Lando, just a man of the people, wants everyone to come see his race. How lovely. Also merch which says The Don would absolutely sell itself, and we do know Lando loves to sell some merch. And he's not the only one, MrVsGarage.com, link in the description. Modern Formula 1 cars would only really have one overtaking opportunity around here, at the hairpin of the international layout known as the Melbourne hairpin, which probably means racing here wouldn't be great. But you may not know that 15 years ago there was an attempt to get Donington back onto the F1 calendar, and during that process they put forward this layout proposal with a couple corners built onto the side of the hill on the infield. and I think it kind of slaps. Fast downhill left into a very tricky braking zone. I can get behind this one. I think Lando Norris could be very happy to use this as his home Grand Prix. Not a bad choice. This leaves us with one more race in the UK for Oliver Bearman. He's an Essex boy, which works out very nicely for our final Grade 2 track, Brands Hatch. Just south of London, this place hasn't hosted Formula 1 since the 1980s, and so once again the facilities would need a bit of an upgrade, but it's got some stuff, it's okay. It's got a restaurant called the Kentagon, which I can only assume is called that because it's in Kent and is a pentagon. It's a hexagon. They built one too many sides, alright. A simple circuit once again, as it was designed back when cars were a lot slower, but it's a well-loved venue, and I do think we could get some chaos during the races here, particularly if we get some Sens up the inside of Druids, or maybe some people spinning out at the fast multi-apex right of Dingle Dell. Yes, that's a real name, I'm not just making up vaguely British sounding stuff. That concludes our UK and wider European leg of the season. Whoa, okay. While editing this, I did realise I forgot to read any of the lines about Alonso or Sainz, our two Spanish Grand Prix for the year. Sainz is from Madrid, so he can have the new Madrid I-famous circuit, and while Alonso could have had Aragon or Jerez, which are both Grade 1, he will be sticking with the established race at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya. That concludes our UK and wider European leg of the season, which means we have just one more driver who needs a home race. And coming in absolutely clutch, it is of course Gabriel Bortoleto. Oh, season finale in Brazil, everybody. Our prayers have been answered. Wait, actually, which city is he from? He's from Sao Paulo. Interlagos season finale. What a lad. What a lad. Bortoleto. No idea if you're actually going to be any good in Formula 1, but just for giving us a banger season finale in this completely fictional scenario, GOAT status for you. There you go. One of the best tracks on the actual calendar, historic season finale venue with more storylines than you can possibly count. You just know, if the championship battle is still going when we get here, this is going to be a good race. Absolutely S-tier pick here to round things off. Lovely. And so here is our entire calendar. Obviously 20 races instead of 24, and even though we lose the entire Middle Eastern leg of the season, it actually looks pretty similar to the real thing. This obviously pushes Formula 1 to be a lot more Europe-centric and undermines a lot of the American expansion that the sport has been doing in the last few years. And I think this is a shame. While we have no North American drivers, there are absolutely tons of fans now in the States and Mexico who are just going to be missing out. We do also lose some fan favourite tracks in other parts of the world. Spa, the Red Bull Ring, maybe Baku, I like it anyway. And that being said, and global accessibility aside, it's a solid calendar. I do believe that 24 races is too many for Formula 1 and 20 is about the right level. And we do have a lot of races on the actual calendar which probably wouldn't be missed by the average fan. Miami, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. I think that trimming down to 20 races again is about the perfect level for Formula 1. And while they obviously won't go for this calendar, I would love to see the sport move more in this direction. I also wanted to show a comparison between this calendar and global viewing statistics of Formula 1, just to show how these race locations match up with where the fans actually are. This is not the easiest thing to confirm, as actual viewing numbers for each country are not published, but Formula 1 gives out an end-of-year report to talk about changes in different regions, and also I've got my YouTube statistics so we can kind of mesh them together and get an idea. You will not be surprised to hear that Formula 1 is very popular in Western Europe, particularly the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy and Spain. And then some of the major regions are the US, Australia, Brazil and India. India is the country that misses out the most in this fictional calendar, and the real one, honestly, as they just cannot seem to get a race to make any money there. Then there's also China, who doesn't give me any YouTube views, rude, but according to Formula 1 is the biggest viewer of the sport. That's a hard one to verify, particularly because of China's isolated internet, but it stands to reason that a country so big is bound to have a few people watching at least. They've obviously lost their Grand Prix in our fake scenario, but you never know. They might gain it back again if someone decides to give another drive to the Jote. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Let me know down below if you think any of our drivers should have got a different venue for their home Grand Prix, and also which Grand Prix could be on the horizon if people like Franco Colapinto or anyone else is about to get into Formula 1. While this kind of video is complete theory and is never going to happen, I do think it's important to think about things like the calendar, as it has a huge impact on the feel of the sport. And I personally believe that the current 24 race slog every year, it has some room for improvement. If that calendar changes in the future, I'll be the first one to let you know. But until then, I've been Mr. V, and I'll Mr. C you later.